there, and welcome to Voice of One Television. I am Jane Emmanuel, and of course, I am delighted to have you join in on the show. Exclusive captures the experiences of ministers and believers who have a working relationship with Him. And today I have with me a special guest, a very special guest here with us in the studio, who will be sharing with us his experiences. But before we meet him, we will take a short break and we'll be back shortly. This is exclusive on Voice of One Television. And like I said earlier, I have with me a very special guest here in the studio who will be sharing with us his experiences in life and ministry. And he is the founder of Burning Hearts Ministry, Lagos, Nigeria. Please welcome with me Pastor Elvis Okhifo. It's good to have you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, sir. Please, can you tell us more about you?
Okay, my name is Elvis Okhifo. I'm the husband of one wife.
Very important.
I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria, and that's where I run our ministry as well.
Okay. All right. So as a young minister, what are your passions, or what are you passionate about?
So I would say right from time, I think it was the passion that translated into ministry.
Okay.
All right. So getting born again and getting into the university. And how I was always seeing young people everywhere going about their daily life without a definite sense of purpose. And you could tell because there was always some form of depravity that they experienced in their hearts, right? If you converse with people who are deep into drugs or in some form of vices, you can tell that all they are doing is to fill up a certain void that they experience currently. And my passion has always been, ever since I found Jesus and I found life, my passion was how to ensure that every young person equally has that experience and how that experience can translate into a definite apprehension of purpose. Wow. So that has been my passion right from time. And
that's really something, I must say. Yeah. All right. So the ministry, Burning Hearts Ministry, which you founded, of course, by the help of God. Can you tell us how it was bettered?
All right. So the name has not always been Burning Hearts Ministries. Okay. We started out as Sound of Abundance Ministries. Okay. And that was from an encounter that I had in 2015. Okay. All right. I was on a prayer and a fasting journey, and it happens to be that many times how God brings me instruction or direction is when I'm in an intense retreat like that. The scriptures begin to speak to me. So I was in, this was in January 2015, and I was just seeking the face of the Lord for directions for that year. Okay. And then I fell into a trance where I began to feel things like, it was like, I looked at the sky, if I remember carefully, and it was thick with clouds about to rain, and it began to drizzle, right? And I was feeling the drizzle, of course, in that trance. And when I woke up from that trance, I went to my knees to pray before I had that experience. When I woke up, I could feel, after somebody hits you, you can still feel like an after effect. I could still feel the drops of rain on my body. And so I was confused. Wow. And so I had to extend my prayer and fasting to understand what exactly that was. Until I began to study. And then one of the first scriptures that I saw was from the book of Matthew that I was studying then, when Jesus said that the harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. Praise the Lord of the harvest and laborers to the harvest. And so I knew that I had a part to play in that harvest, right? So I kept on seeking the face of the Lord, and then I was studying 1 Kings, and I got to the whole encounter with Elijah and Ahab, and I got to where he said he could hear the sound of an abundance of rain. And it struck a very deep chord in my heart. And the Holy Ghost from that moment on began emphasizing that was going to be the foundation of the ministry. So linking the need for laborers and making an announcement of something God is about to do. I knew that I had to announce something, right? So in the process of seeking the Lord to know what exactly I'm announcing, what does He want me to say, what does He want me to do, that was how the ministry started.
Okay.
In 2016, eventually. And so I began to run something like that on campus, where it was majorly a prayer meeting. And
what campus is that?
Covenant University, pardon me, right? So from 2016, we began having meetings in the different halls of residence. And there was always a certain passion that was ignited in the people who attended those prayer meetings, that they kept on coming back. So we had to make it periodic, right?
Okay.
And eventually, it's a long process, right? So, but to your question, how Burning Heart started, eventually when I was to leave campus, this was in 2020. All right, I had another experience while I was seeking the face of the Lord for the next phase of my life. I was on a long period of prayer and fasting, and then I was still studying again in the book of Luke 24. I got to Luke 24, and then I saw the whole encounter with the guys on their way to Emmaus and with Jesus. And after they asked him to spend the night with them because the day was fast spent. And when he was done with all that happened and he went, their experience was that their hearts burned within them while he spoke. Said, did not our hearts burn while he spoke unto us? And then I paused there, and then the Lord took me back the last 4 to 5 years. And it dawned on me that the experience all that while was that people had similar experiences in our meetings.
Okay.
Right. And so I knew that the ministry the Lord would have me pioneer would have to do with a heavy deluge of utterance and teaching that will set men on fire to pursue God and chase after destiny. So that's how Burning Heart's ministry started.
That's very interesting. Yeah. All right. Okay, so currently, how is it going? Right.
So after I received that name in 2020, I went on another period of prayer and fasting, and that took me till 2022, where the Lord released us to having physical meetings in the city of Lagos.
Okay.
But from 2020 to 2022, we're having daily prayer meetings, which we still have now, online, right? And so we just kept on praying and having one Bible study a week up until 2022. And then the first meeting, it was in 2021, I remember in February 2021, that the Lord spoke to me about the kind of meetings we were going to be having. Spoke to me about having the Lagos Prayer Festival, which we have every year now.
Is it still ongoing?
Yes, please. We just had the last one last year in November.
Interesting.
Also spoke about the Immersion Conference, which is a monthly conference that we have every other month, right? Which is still running now. And so he released me to start having those meetings in 2022. And so now there are majorly 3 facets of our ministry, which is number 1, the prayer festival, the immersion conferences, and our Sunday meetings, which we have every Sunday evening now.
Okay. Yeah. So being a young man in ministry, you have, quite a lot of people under you. So what can you say about how you've been able to handle discipleship and raising the people under you?
So I found by experience that people would learn from what you do, much more than they learn from what you say.
Wow.
And so the strongest tool of a discipler is an accurate life. And so I had to labor to be accurate myself, because you can preach for a long time and they would eventually do what you are doing, right? So if you are teaching on prayer, you'll have to exemplify prayer.
Of course.
So I remember the first time on campus when I was going to have a stretch prayer meeting. This was in 2017, I believe. We're going to have like a 5-hour prayer meeting. I called for a 5-hour prayer meeting, but before then, I had not prayed up to 5 hours on my own. So I had to start subjecting myself to that rigor for some days prior
to the meeting.
Yes, yeah. And so what began to happen was, while I was in my private prayer expeditions, if I would say, people began to join me then until the day of the meeting. So that day, it was basically easy for everyone because they had seen somebody do it. Because prayer was not really the reigning thing then. All right. So they had seen someone do it and it was easy then. So it just made me understand that the strongest tool for discipleship is an accurate life. All right. So that has been my experience. I try to live out the things that I teach first. All right. And it just makes the work easier.
That's something to take home for our viewer out there, living an exemplary life. All right. So, sir, what would you say about the challenges, maybe you might have come across in ministry, and how were you able to handle all of the challenges?
So I think that for me, I've not done this for a long time. But in the short time that I've done ministry, the greatest challenge I'll say I have will be bringing other people into the same burden you have received. Communicating the vision in a way where they can own it, especially those who are going to be working with you. And so initially, because of what I had seen where we were going, I'd seen what God wanted to do with us. So when we have a program or a meeting back then, you know, there was always this zeal and passion in me to get this done, get the venue sets, get this done, you know. So, but other people initially did not have that same drive. And I was thinking that they did not love God. But eventually, I discovered that it was not their love for God. It was just that I had seen a vision they had not yet seen. And until they see that, they may not have the passion that I have. So I had to start communicating consistently and having more closed in-house meetings with our leaders so we can just have some form of fellowship. And the Holy Ghost began to do the work from there. We're not yet there, but I've seen significant progress just by having personal engagements with the leaders.
Okay. It has been an interesting time already. But before we talk more about your experiences in ministry, I would like us to take a short break, and we will be right back after the show breaks. This is exclusive on the Voice of One television. And I have been talking to our guest, Pastor Elvis Okhifo, who has been sharing with us his experiences in life and ministry. All right, sir. I would like you to tell us, while doing ministry, of course, that's what you're currently doing. How have you been able to handle, the female folks and being around sisters? And that was prior to before you got married, because I know, of course, you said you are a husband of one wife.
Yeah.
So before you got married, how were you able to handle, being around female folks and sisters in the church?
Okay, so that was not a problem for me because number one, from 2020 when I left school, we didn't have any physical meeting up until 2021, even 2022, though I had a lot of itinerant engagements, but I've never really lived alone until I got to the house that I'm staying with my wife before now. Nevertheless, I've always been a very introverted person, right? And then I always have my male folks around. And so I have very strict boundaries. You can't find me in a secret place with a lady. Okay,
because I was going to say you should emphasize what were the highlights, or what are the highlights of the boundaries you had to set?
Yeah, so that's number one. I have very strict boundaries around that, right? So I ensure that there's really no reason why any sister should be visiting me. If it's a very serious case, we can talk on the phone, right? And when I go for any ministration, so something happened recently. This was even after I got married, right? So I went to minister somewhere. I was privileged to minister in a university, and the power of God moved so mightily in that meeting. And after the meeting, I discovered that about 85% of the audience were females, right, that attended the meeting. So when we're done, almost all of them wanted counsel. So
I can imagine.
What I just did was I held the man who invited me, which was the chaplain of the university.
Wow.
And I was with him all through. And I told them, anybody who wants to see should go and talk to him, right? And that's now. But before now, I always have my guys around. So you can't really find me alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so what can you also tell us any more to you doing other things aside just being in ministry?
Yes. So in 2017, I picked up a hobby in photography.
Okay.
And the more I honed my skill there, the more I saw business value there as well. And so in 2018, I started a photography business. I'm just taking pictures on campus then. But then I was using my iPad, and people wanted to pay me for taking pictures on my iPad.
Wow.
So I discovered, I said, why not turn this into a business, right? Because I had some time on campus then to my hand. So I kept on learning, kept on honing my skill, and kept on watching a lot of videos and educational materials. So eventually I built a business in that line. And then I picked interest in filmmaking, video production, shooting, and basically just being able to build organizations, build brands, build business with a camera, right? And provide business value for organizations too. So that made me delve in depth into integrated marketing communications, where I had to learn the nitty-gritty of marketing, social media campaigns, and all of that. So right now, I run an agency called Stoffel Africa. It's a media production and strategy brand based in Lagos, Nigeria.
Oh,
so that's what I do.
That's interesting. So currently you have something doing aside ministry.
Oh yes.
Okay. So it means it is important that for young persons who want to go into ministry to at least have something aside that. What do you have to say about?
I would say that's good. Firstly, I would say it depends on the instruction that God gives you. If you have a very specific instruction not to do anything else and focus on the work, it means God has His plan for you.
Okay.
Right, and He wants you to focus there. I don't have that instruction.
Yeah.
So I decided to monetize my business, right, and just build a brand, something that is basically working on autopilot now. So I have enough time to travel and other things that I need to do while that is still running, even with my absence.
Okay. So it is important for one to have that. And as well, it is also important that it has to be according to God's instruction.
Yes, because if you're going to do ministry, so initially, right, and up until recently, that was a major source of how we funded our meetings. Until God began to raise partners for us and all of that. But then again, it depends on the instruction that God has given you. If you are a minister, it's a noble thing to have a job by the side, but not everybody can handle it. There's the weight. It depends on the weight of the assignment, right? And also there are just several things around it. If God has told you not to, no, you're fine. But if He has not, please find your tent and make it.
Thank you very much for that advice. I believe our viewer has been learning so much on this. Okay, so how were you able to connect with Apostle Arome Osayi, Remnant Christian Network?
In 2014 was when I began to take my walk with God much more seriously.
Okay.
And that was when I began to learn that prayer is not just something you do when you want to ask God for something. It's a life that you live. So I began to practice living by prayer and just pressing into God to have perspective for my life. Because my past up until then had zero definition. In fact, there was a period of time that I was going to commit suicide. But maybe there's no time to go into that now. Because I felt like my life didn't have any meaning. So, but I found Jesus and I began to press into Him. And I began to have so many experiences that I could not really explain. All right, sometimes I'm sleeping and then while I'm sleeping, I leave my body, I'm traveling somewhere, or sometimes I touch something, somebody else touches that thing and then they are healed. You know, all kinds of stuff began to happen, but I did not understand them. Coming from a Catholic background, I didn't have a lot of doctrinal foundation to explain those kinds of stuff. Until one day, a certain brother came to do evangelism on my floor in the hostel then. And then he came into our room. Long story short, he preached and all of that, right? And then he invited us over to his room for a prayer meeting that evening. So when I got there, he was there with his friends. They were listening to one strange man. I was just hearing shouting and I didn't understand what he was saying. Okay. But while I was hearing that message, something was burning in my heart, right? I could not explain it. So I had to get more of his messages. The person that was Apostle Arame's messages. I had to get more of the messages. And for at least that first week, I understood nothing he was saying. But I just knew that while I was listening to the message, something was happening in me. Right? Until eventually he in his messages, he began to answer the questions that I've been having, that I didn't even know that I had those questions, right? I heard him share experiences of how God explained stuff to him when he had similar experiences to what I was having as well. So I just kept on drinking from that well every single day. And so one of those days, because I was in the choir. Okay. We're done with choir rehearsal one of those evenings, and normally after then, maybe we'll go to cafeteria, get food, and go back to the hostel. When you were in school? While I was in school. This was 100 level. Okay. Right. And so, but I just had, I won't say I had a leading, right? I just stayed back in chapel for a reason I don't know. Myself, the keyboardist, and one other guy that was part of the choir there. The drummer and he was a keyboardist. So we're just gisting. And the drummer there happens to also know Apostle Arome. Okay. So we're just gisting about some things, and we mentioned his name. Then the guy that was there, the keyboardist, said, "Wait, is he Arome Osayi?" We're like, "Yes, he's the one." I said, he said that Apostle Arome Osayi is his in-law. I said, it's a lie. Because what are the odds, right? So I had listened to Apostle so much that everything he had shared in his messages, I could tell you his life history from the messages. I could even locate the tent, Benue State Library, Urukum, and all of that, just from.
So you already had a map in your head.
Yeah, and all the names of his pastors that he was mentioning, I knew all of them just from the message. So I started tackling the guy with those questions, and he got everything right.
Wow.
I said, okay, so it's true. The next time you see, tell him that he has one son that he does not know about, right?
Somewhere.
So he eventually spoke to Apostle, maybe that day or the next day. And then he told me that Apostle said I should come to his house. I said, it's a lie. Right? And then he said that he should share his WhatsApp number with me or something like that. So I texted him. And he actually responded and invited me to his place the next year. And so I went there, and that's how the whole connection started. I stayed with him for a while in Lagos there. And so that's how I met Apostle Arome.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how has it been being a son to...
I mean, it's been amazing having such an example to look up to, and he's a very present father. Right, he has been present in every single phase of my life. Right, and sometimes I wonder, and it makes me even judge myself, because somebody that is that busy always has time to respond to his sons. What am I doing at that? I want to say I'm busy too, right? So it's been really amazing. Yeah.
All right. So what do you have to say about the IEC?
Oh, so at the IEC, the International Eagles Conference, I think it's a very strategic platform in the body of Christ. How that every year the theme is always prophetic, such that it gives voice to the current revelation position of the Spirit per time. And how that God is gracious enough to collocate all the strategic ministers that have found grace in the area of the theme as well, so that we can drink from. I just think it's a very strategic meeting that everybody who has data and is not present in Nigeria, or who is present in Nigeria and is able to make it down, should be a part of, because of what God is doing in the body of Christ through the IEC. All right.
So what are your expectations for this year's IEC?
Well, the theme is a life of prayer.
Yeah.
And I'm here to explore God like astronauts explore space, the way Apostle Arome always says it. So I'm here to learn, unlearn and relearn on the subject of prayer, and also practice prayer.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, and we hope to have you again some other time.
Thank you so much.
I hope you would come when we invite you.
No problem. I will.
All right. It is at this point that I say thank you, my viewer, for staying with us on the program today. Until I come your way again next time, I am Jane Emmanuel. Keep watching Voice of One Television. Stay blessed.
Voice of One Television takes its official cry on satellite with its mantra of striving towards the rebirth of Apostolic Christianity. Its sole aim is to invade every home, systems, structure, 7 continents, 7+ billion persons with the content of Apostolic Christianity, thereby discipling all nations for Christ, and yes, broadcasting on all H265 HD free-to-air decoders. For more information and inquiries, please call +234 9122 61 6226.